Congratulations on taking the dive into Power Query. You're in the right place. In the next 15 minutes, I'm going to take you through the basics of Power Query to give you a foundation that can serve as a jumping off point to optimizing your work. We're going to look at the basics of getting data from CSVs, Excel files, compiling data from folders, and a little bit of troubleshooting in between. So let's jump in. The first thing we're going to look at is how to get data from a single CSV file. Next, we'll look at how to combine data from folders, and then we're going to look at how to choose the most recent file from a folder. Whenever you're starting in Power Query, you're going to go to Data in the ribbon, and then Get Data on the left. Here, we're going to go to Get Data from CSV. We're going to access these folders that are in the link below, and we're going to get data from that first folder of single file. We're going to go ahead and load this. This is just the preview folder there, and we're going to hit Transform Data. From here, Power Query Editor opens up, and you'll see on the left-hand side, there's our query. In this middle section here, you can see the columns that are in this data. So we have date, store number, and sales. And the right side, we have applied steps. So this is what Power Query remembers of what it's going to do when it goes to get this data. You can click through each step and see the logic that's applied in each step. But for now, we're just going to get this data and we're going to do a couple sorts on it. So as you can see, our data is sorted by date, but in our second column of store numbers, those are all mixed up and jumbled. So we're first going to sort ascending on dates, and then we're going to sort ascending on store number as well, so that those are all in a row. From here, we're going to hit close and load in the upper left. We're going to get close and load, and on the right-hand side, you can see our query pops up here as a connection only. We're going to hit load to, and we're going to change this to a table. Yours might load by default to Excel. However, mine is currently set to default to a connection only, meaning that that's just stored in Power Query. Once you hit loading to a table, then you can see that that table is automatically loaded here into Excel. So very quickly, you can get your first Power Query going here. You can also see on the table design there what the table name is, important for referencing the table and formulas. Next, we're going to jump onto that second folder. We're going to combine daily files here. So you can see we have sales from June 13th and June 14th. Could be a type of data source that you have as well. So instead of getting data from CSV here, we're going to jump down to getting data from folder. So this is going to allow us to combine data. We're going to go select that folder. Notice there's no files on display there since we're selecting a folder. When we select that folder, we see a view of those two files that are in the folder, and we're going to go to Combine and Transform Data. We're going to just click OK on this page. It's just showing a sample of the file that is loaded here. From here, you can see we have a Power Query that's just spit out from combining these files. So there's a lot of helper queries that come out from Power Query, does everything on the back end that just combines that data in a folder as long as it's the same format. The combining goes very smoothly usually, and you can notice that there's a lot more applied steps in this one, a lot more going on in the back end. We're going to clean this up a bit. We're going to right click on that source name and hit delete. And we're going to do the same sorting here on the date and the store number, so that our data is going to look similar from our two Power Queries, the one that we just set with the single source and this combination one. This time we're going to hit close and load to skip a step. We're going to hit close and load to table, existing source, and there we go. We got our second Power Query in here, combining two different files from the same folder. And as you can see, we're looking at the same data, so everything's looking good so far. Next, in our third example here, we're going to look in a folder and we're going to choose the most recent file from that folder. So maybe your data is structured like this, where you have a week-to-date file every day. So we have a file from 6/13 that has just 6/13, and then a 6/14 file that has 6/13 and 6/14. So ideally, we'd like to go into that folder and choose the most recent file that's been saved there. So again, we're going to From Folder. We're going to choose that folder there. Hit Open. Still going to do Combine and Transform here. Click through OK here on this window as well. Very similar steps However, in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to jump up a few steps there in the applied steps. We're going to want to extract that most recent file in the date modified field. So we're going to click on that filter there, and we're going to go to choose the is latest field there. You see there's a lot of options for filters on dates here. We're going to insert that step, and you can see that that filters that date modified to just the most recent file. So you see our source here is just that 614 file. So we're loading that week-to-date file that was saved more recently than the 613. We're going to remove that first column just to clean this up again the same way that we've cleaned our other files. We're going to do a couple sorts here, and we're going to do our close and load as well. Again, close and loading to a table. We're going to choose that existing worksheet. And of course, you can choose what cell you want it to be loaded to. Our box is in the way here. We're going to move that to the side. And close and loaded there as well. Clean up our cell formats there. And as you can see, same data all across the board there. Everything's working as intended. So what if we want to take this a step further? Say, for example, we wanted to get more information on what these stores are that we're reporting on. Let's say we have this store info table saved in an Excel worksheet here that has our store number. It has country as what kind of store it is, maybe website, full price, or an outlet store, and the conversion rate to USD. So let's look at how we can bring Excel tables into Power Query, and then how we can make these tables talk to each other in Power Query. So we're going to get another section in here for store info. We're going to go right back to data, get data from file and from Excel workbook. Go right back to that store info folder, and we're going to import here. You can see we have a little bit more information here when we're clicking into an Excel file. We have the file there, and then we have two sources below. One is for the table, and the bottom one is for the sheet. We're going to choose to get data from that table. We're going to skip the transformations for now, and we're going to just load directly into Excel. And there we go. Just like that preview in the File Explorer, we have our data. Next, we're going to look at how to merge this and how to, for example, change our sales to USD since our source data is in local currency. We're going to go and launch the Power Query editor from that Get Data menu. And you can see we have quite a few queries already. We're going to jump back to that first one that we made that is just the single source file. And we're going to go up to Home and Merge Queries, and we're going to choose to merge as a new query. We're going to choose that store info query, and we're going to select both the store number in both queries. And here we go. We got a new query here as merge. We're going to rename it so it's a little bit easier to read. We're going to call it sales in USD. Now this looks just like the other query, except we have this last column, store info. We're going to click on that two arrow button there, and we are going to choose to expand the country and the store type and the conversion rate to USD. Go ahead and unselect that last box. That gives you a prefix to your columns, and we just don't need it in this case. Just like that, we've matched those stores across those two data sources, and now we have more information about the stores. So we can now derive maybe what our sales in USD would be. So here we're going to go at the top, add column, add custom column. I'm going to name this sales USD. We're going to add in our sales field there on the right, and then we're also going to add in our conversion rate to USD with a division operator. And we're going to see how that looks. We're going to hit OK, and that's going to add a new column to our query here. So you can see US stores unaffected. That's a 1-to-1 conversion rate. Canada stores a bit different there, along with our Mexico stores. Something doesn't look quite right though, since our conversion rate for Mexico and Canada, we should be seeing amounts that are a little bit less. So we used the wrong operator. You can go back to that field by hitting the cog button, and then we just go in there and change that division to multiplications, and our numbers are looking a lot more reasonable now. From here, we're going to change the type of this column. Power Query defaults to just a default type. We're going to change that to a decimal number instead. And we're going to hit close and load. So we're just going to get this back into our Excel file. Same thing, table, and we're going to choose that cell there and get it loaded. And just like that, we have our source data with a little bit more information. We have sales along with what type of store it is, what country it's in, conversion rate, and the sales in USD. This is a lot of data to look at. Let's try to summarize it. So we're going to take this data and we're going to summarize down to maybe the country and the type of store level. So we're going to get right back into that Power Query editor. You can come back over here and just double click on a query to open up the Power Query editor. We are going to right click our sales in USD and we're going to hit reference. That gives us a new query, and it's just going to take all of that data that was in sales USD, give us a new query, and we can make more manipulations with it. So the best way to summarize data in Power Query, you're going to select the columns that you want to keep and summarize, and don't worry about the number fields that you're going to summarize right now. You're going to go to the Home tab and hit that Group By. So you can see we get this dialog box with date, country, and store type up top. And down in the bottom, we're going to create a new field for sales USD. The operation there is going to be sum. We're going to sum that sales USD field, and it's going to go by each one of those columns and kind of reduce our data to just show the unique fields for each one of those data points. So here we have all of our stores by country and store type all rolled up and sales in USD. So we're going to go ahead and hit close and load there and get it into our workbook again. Clean up our cells as well, make it a little bit more readable. And just like that, we've summarized our data. So what happens when your data updates? Let's say now we have our 615 data. We have those sample files here in our 5th folder, sales for 615 and a week to date file for 615. What are you going to do with your Power Queries now that you have new data? So let's go ahead and move those files into the new folders. We'll delete the old files here, and we'll see how that would work. So we're going to get that 615 week to date file right in that first folder. And then we are going to get our single daily file into our daily folder. And we're going to move that week to date file right into our most recent file folder as well, keeping those 2 older files. Now, from this point, we're going to just go ahead and refresh all of our queries. There's a few ways to do that. There's a refresh all there in the data tab. You can also go one by one and hit refresh there on the queries and connections. We're going to hit refresh all right now. Here, we're going to run into an issue. Because we deleted our first file there and our first query relied on that file, it's not going to be able to find that file. So if we look back in that folder, that file that used to be called 614 is now called 615. So how do we go about fixing that in Power Query? Well, we're ultimately going to want to open back up that Power Query editor. So from here, we're going to double click on any of the queries here in the right hand side. I'm going to open up our Power Query editor. Here's the query with an error. So from here, we're going to click on the right hand side, the applied steps, the source. So you can see that we're kind of hard code referencing that date. We're just going to take the date out and call it a sales week to date file. This is going to be a lot better. If that file is constantly updating, we don't want a date in there because Power Query is not going to be able to find that file every time. We just changed the source reference and the file type. Go ahead and hit that refresh preview. That's going to load that again in the Power Query editor. And then coming back into Excel and refreshing all, you can see that now our data, we have that 615 data right there in the file again. I hope this video helped make Power Query click for you. Power Query is something that is difficult to transition into after working in just Excel for so long, but once you get the hang of it, you'll realize that it's really easier than you think. Feel free to leave a comment or a question below, and be sure to like and subscribe for future videos. Thanks for watching.